Paula. My question is about the communications course, as I have heard many ex-Scientologists saying that it is a great course and they are still grateful for it. So what is the communications course about? And is it highlighting an emotional vulnerability that makes people fall for Scientology? And Nia O'Nillicat. I have been reading about people who say the one thing they got something out of from Scientology is the communication course. It seems to be the course most people try out first. I found myself drawn to it for personal reasons, but I would not venture into a Scientology church to take the course. However, I found that they offer the course online for free, so I signed up with an email address I only use if I expect someone to send me junk mail. I had a problem right away with the first page, and that is what my question is about. The online course is in my own language, so I hope I translate the terms correctly. It is about duplication. According to the text, it is a vital part of communication. The definition is to make an exact copy of something. This sounds like their idea of the communication course is basically about how to get others to duplicate or copy what you tell them. Is this a first step into the indoctrination from their part to get people to accept duplicating or copying what they are told? Also, I object to lots of stuff they say about communication, like that it is a particle to move from one place to another. Surely I cannot be the only one objecting to stuff they are told, so how are people that object to things said handled in courses? Are they just told to be quiet and accept what is being said? Is it open for discussion, or are people in general just accepting things said in course? All right, the communications course. Let's go ahead and tackle this head on. Definitely some misconceptions here, so I'm going to try to help clear those up. First off, the online version of the communications course or any of those classes are all just the theory parts of the class. The communications course specifically is mostly practical drilling that you do with somebody else, exercises that you do. That's not really going to come across the same way in an online course. Even if they tell you how to do it, it's really not the same thing as when you're in a Scientology classroom with a supervisor who's making sure you're doing it properly and rigorously. They're really into you doing the communications drills very, very thoroughly. They want you on them for a good long chunk of time, which means 10 minutes is nothing. They want you on these drills for, a good solid, I'd say, let's just say hours, okay? Not every single drill takes hours, but some of them, they really, really want you digging in and getting your teeth into it. So what are these drills? The communications class is almost entirely, or the communications course, is almost entirely drills. It is an introductory level course. It's something you can come in and do as your very first action. It's like, I don't know, I think it's like $50 or $100. And maybe 200 at this point, I don't know. But it's basically a series of, I think it's 20 or 21, something like that, maybe 19, 20 drills that you do. And all of them have to do with, the communications course is a breakdown, a simplified version of the professional level training routines, or TRs. There's TRs 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 5 basic TRs that cover different aspects of communicating. The public level communications course takes those 5 drills and breaks them down into even smaller bite-sized chunks. And I'm not going to go through all of the drills here, but that's basically what the basic communications course is. A lot of people in the big wide world have trouble communicating. We see this all the time. They stutter, they can't look at the person they're talking to. They're too shy to say anything in the first place. They can't even deal with looking at other people. They have a problem answering questions. They have a problem answering statements or acknowledging things that are said to them so that the other person actually knows they got heard, right? There's nothing more frustrating than talking to somebody and they never say anything back. They don't answer you. They don't reply. You're like, after a while, you start, are you even hearing what I'm saying? Are you even listening to me, right? So acknowledgement actually serves an important function in human communication. Then there's TR3, which has to do with repeating things that you need to say over and over again if the person didn't answer your question, for example. And then there's TR4, which has to do with when you're trying to get across one kind of communication and the person throws something at you that is out of the blue. It's unexpected. You didn't see it coming, right? You say, hey, you want to go to the movies, and suddenly, let's say you're you're going to go out to the movies, and you go to your wife and you go, hey, let's are you ready to get going? We're going to go. And she says, I hate you. You're a scumbag, right? And you're like, wait a minute, what? Right? So how do you deal with that? You didn't see that coming. That's called an origination. They originated something to you, and you're going to have to now deal with that. And if you can't deal with it, if you go, well, run, and storm off, well, that's not very good communication, right? So you have to learn how to deal with unexpected originations from other people. And in the middle of all this, and like I said, these are the main TRs. You break these down into subparts, and that's where you get your communications course. It uses newspapers and magazines and stuff as fodder for things to communicate, so the person isn't necessarily struggling to make things up. And basically, it's two people sitting across from each other in chairs about 3 feet apart, and they look at each other. First, they just get used to looking at each other. And then they get used to looking at each other, but one of them is kind of trying to throw the other person off, and they progress through the drills. Somewhere along the line, you tend to run into what the person's main weakness is with communicating. Not everybody has all these problems with communication, but everybody could do better at it. And communication is so vital to everything that we do in life, in dealing with other people, that people respond very readily to learning learning new bits and pieces that can help them with this. And it really does affect their life, because if you can communicate effectively, which is not just a matter of finding the right words, but also a matter of, like I said, looking at the person you're talking to, granting them some importance, expecting them to grant you some importance, really making sure that it's flowing back and forth. Like if you pay attention to these kind of things, even just on a mechanical level, you actually do improve your relationships with other people. It's just how it is. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not a panacea. It's not a universal solvent. It doesn't solve everything. Hubbard made that claim that communication is the universal solvent, but it does solve a lot of problems. You can get a long way with good communication. And this world is, tending to forget that a lot, and all the heat and passion of social media and bad communication skills, because social media is just it's a barrier between you and somebody else communicating, right? And it's just text, for example, so you can't tell tone, you can't tell emotion, sarcasm. I mean, there's so many things that are lost. So good, solid human communication can do a whole lot to improve people's lives. And that is why there's such a positive response to it when you point out little faults in people's ability or big faults in people's ability to deal with and communicate to others. So I think basically that's why it's such a powerful course for people, and why they respond so readily to it, and why they remember it fondly. I mean, to this day, I still remember the drills I did, and I thought they were good for me. I was a high school student. I was shy. I was introverted. I could not even get up the nerve to try to ask somebody else out for a date. Well, after I did the course, I finally worked up the nerve to do that, but I was a little bit, too much in people's faces. But that was probably more me than it was Scientology. However, the thing about the communications course, not at the public level, but at the next level up, is you get into doing these drills for hours and hours and hours. I mean, sitting staring at somebody else in a chair for 2 hours straight, no blink, no fidget, no stumble, no mess around, no falling out of your chair, no going to sleep. You have to sit there solidly. Man, that is work. I mean, work. And it's trance-inducing, because getting through that, you go to places, it's almost like a drug trip in some ways. It's pretty weird, right? Because it's inducing trance. So I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say here is they take it too far. It goes too far. That's another example of dialing it up to 11, taking it to an extreme. You take a basically good thing and you morph it all out of proportion so that it becomes the be-all, end-all of existence. And that's the problem with cults. It's not that everything they say and do is wrong. It's the exaggerated hyperbole of it all that makes it crazy and crazy-making. So I think that's what I can say about that. As far as the duplication point that you asked about, duplication is part of Hubbard's formula for communication, okay? I am going to eventually get a whole video done on this subject because there's a chapter of the Scientology handbook that covers this. But I'll say for now that the communication formula is cause, distance, effect. So there's somebody at the cause end originating a communication. It goes across a distance. It's perceived or talked about as a particle, even though nobody thinks there's a little piece of particle coming out of your mouth. It's not that kind of particle. It's more like an energy particle or something, I guess you would say. But it flows from cause across a distance to effect. Effect is the person who's receiving the communication. Then part of this, okay, let's see if I can remember even half of this. So this cause, distance, effect with intention, attention, duplication, and understanding. Okay, those are the component parts of communication. There's a whole list of other stuff that goes along with this too, but what I just said is the fundamental parts of it. So duplication is a key part of it. You can't, according to Hubbard, and I'm not really so sure about this one way or the other, but here's what I'll tell you about it. Hubbard said that you first have to be able to duplicate something before you can actually fully understand it. I think that's an example of dialing it up to 11, but this is why it's part of the communication theory that you were reading about. If you cannot duplicate what somebody else is saying to you, then how would you understand what they're saying to you? Well, there's lots of ways, because conceptual understanding of things and context and emotion and tone. I mean, there's lots of ways that we communicate. But Hubbard said that duplication was part of this. So that's why it's in there. I don't know. I've not done any formal communications training or classes or anything like that outside of what I learned in Scientology. So I can't yet speak critically about that from an educated point of view. I can just say that I see holes in it too. And that's why I'm going to do research on it eventually and get a whole video produced on that. So that's kind of everything I can say for now. I hope that satisfies your questions.